All right. Well, why don't we then just transition right into another topic after that great interview? Fidel Barajas from RSL to Liga MX, like 4 months after he signed for like eight times more than they signed him for. Give me your thoughts on the impact to RSL. What if is it a good price tag? Should they have held on to him longer? Give me your thoughts on the move.
It's a great price tag for RSL. I don't blame them for pulling the trigger on this. I would 100% do the same thing if I were in their shoes. You collect a ton of money on a player who looks like he has good potential, but like potential is not a certainty. Like, right? We've seen plenty of players who have massive potential never hit it. Why risk it when you can collect like I want to say decent money, but honestly, from MLS standards, it's really good money. I mean, that's money that like teams are getting for like Frankie Amaya or Aiden Morris. So I would 100% collect on that for someone that you had to take in for less than 600 minutes. I think it's great business for them. I don't think it says much about RSL or even MLS from their perspective. Honestly, I think it says more about USL and Charleston. I mean, I think it's another example of a talent coming through USL and succeeding and having an impact and earning big moves overseas like Josh Widener and Jonathan Gomez. And now you have Barajas, who hasn't necessarily made that jump overseas, but is already commanding a really big fee at just 18 years old. So I think it's a sign of good things for USL. It's a sign of good things for Charleston. When people look back, they'll remember, if Barajas really takes off, Charleston was where he got to start. So I think it's a good deal all around. I think Guadalajara as well are getting a player with a lot of potential. So it was a worthwhile investment probably from their end as well. So good deal across the board, I would say.
Connor, this is an MLS podcast. Don't you know we're trying to kill USL? Stop giving everyone so much credit, man. No, in all seriousness, right? Like I remember when he signed on, and the only thing we talked about was, oh man, this guy's going to be so good. I can't wait to see how long it takes him to get there. Hopefully, it's very quick. Him, Luna, Arango, like it's going to be great at RSL. Young player of the USL Championship season last year. On big radars of everybody. What a great scoop to get. But I don't think anybody thought that we'd have I think the question was like, what could he become and where could he go next? And I don't think anybody expected to have that answer this soon. Not even at the League's Cup break. And he's on his way over to Chivas in an attempt, what I would assume is Liga MX's attempt to get him to be a dual national with Mexico instead of USMNT. But 2 assists in 17 matches, but only 5 starts. He was purchased for 230K, flipped for $4 million. As you mentioned, Charleston did really well developing him, going to turn that into a sell-on fee. I don't know what the actual fee was. I don't think I saw it reported, but I may have missed it. But you're netting about $3 million in 5 months. Like, you can't turn that down. There's no way you turn that down. You reinvest that, especially with the new rules coming in place. You get 2 or 3 players for depths. You put it back into the youth academies. You put it into facilities. Either way, that money having just shown up in less than half a year, no brainer, right? And I do think that it's really smart because he wasn't doing so much for RSL, right? We're going to talk about Carranza after this. That is a huge loss because of how much he contributed. He started 5 games for them and they sold him for a $3 million profit. He wasn't doing so much. He had just over 500 minutes. Like it's easily replaceable. Now you mentioned the potential. The potential might not be easily replaceable, but even that has an asterisk to it, right? Like the 2 assists that he had, they came in the same game, and that was it. He had all the potential in the world, but like you mentioned, it's not a sure thing. And there are a lot of people out there who have a ton of potential that you can bring in to play in that position. I think there was likely a number that RSL said, if you hit it, we'll have to do it. Like we can't turn it down. Chivas came in and said bet, and it all just moved on from there. But I don't think the impact is going to be as big to RSL as it will be for other players leaving the league. We already talked about Giacomakis leaving and Vasquez last year, and we'll hit on Carranza in a little bit. Of all of those moves, this is the least impactful for the biggest bang for your buck, if you will, right? Didn't really do a ton of work. And that's not saying he was bad for them, by the way. I'm not trying to talk bad about it. But it's not like you were losing Chicharanjo, who's got, MVP level stats right now. This is one of those things I don't think you could have turned down for sure.
Oh yeah. No, I don't think it's disrespectful to say that like he didn't have an impact on RSL. I mean, they didn't bring him in to have an instant impact with the team. They brought him in because he had a lot of potential and he would potentially, have that impact within maybe a couple of years. But when you bring him in right away, you're kind of just looking for him to assimilate, get used to the new league, and continue to build on a potential, train with the team a bit. So I think it was expected that he wasn't going to play this like too much straight out the gate, especially with RSL being like a team competing at the top of the West right now. It's not a situation where you're looking to develop younger players at the moment. Not that you're not looking for that, but you're going to go with your Chicho Aranjos, your Andres Gomez's instead, or your Diego Luna's, people who are a bit more proven in the league when you're challenging at the top. So 100% was the right call. And I think even like regardless of taking that money and putting it into adding more depth into the team only has one designated player right now. Take that 4 million and go get some more designated players for this team and make a run at supporter shield. I mean, you're in the hunt right now. You're falling a little bit far behind FCC with some recent weeks, but go invest in some good designated players and really bolster this team. And I think you could be competing with FCC for the supporter shield and Inter Miami.
Yeah, that's such an interesting point. I didn't even think about it that way because you look at that stuff and you're like, okay, you can convert it into GAM, and GAM is used more for the middle stuff, and just super interesting. I didn't even think about, like, yeah, you don't need to convert it into GAM, pocket that stuff, and boom, right in you go. He doesn't count as a homegrown, so MLS is going to get a cut of it anyway to go back to the league. So it's interesting how much he'll actually be able to turn into usable money. But anyways, like regardless, right? Good move. I think all the boxes were checked, and I don't think the impact is super super strong. But what I am curious about is there seems to be this really interesting trend of Liga MX taking a lot of MLS players, both Mexican American dual nationals and not, right. So Barajas is just the latest in the line of MLS players to make a switch, including, as just previously mentioned, Giacomakis, Vasquez, Cade Cowell, Efren Alvarez, Ake Loba, and Nashville legend Chicharito, Ruben Rubin, and Frank Boley. Right, this is all just in the last year. What do you think about this trend? What do you think? Like, is it worrying? Is it good for both leagues? One league? What are your thoughts?
I don't think it's particularly worrying. I mean, they obviously don't have the same salary restrictions that we have, so they can, throw around the money a bit more, entice people to come over and make that jump. But at the same time, these MLS teams are collecting fat paychecks for these. Like these guys are not moving over for chump change. Like Yakimakis was like 10 million, I think, and Vasquez, I think, was about 8 million. Barajas for less than 600 minutes is moving for 4 million. Like they're throwing around good sums of money. So I'm not going to say that it's a loss for MLS. I mean, I know they're losing out on the talent, but you're getting a lot of money back, which you can reinvest, and hopefully with roster or salary rules potentially getting a bit more favorable to teams in the near future, you can actually invest that money into building the team properly instead of just taking it all and throwing it right at your top three players and that's about it, and having to just kind of like do some more savvy moves to build out the rest of the team. So I think it's good. It's good for the league. I mean, it's obviously good for Liga MX as well. They're getting talented players. We've seen them have, or we've seen a few of them already have like instant impacts. I mean, Vasquez went over and was scoring immediately for Monterrey. And then I believe Cade Cowell too had a really good start over when he jumped over as well. So it seems like it's favorable all the way around. And it's not like we're necessarily losing superstars in the league. I mean, Yakimakis did really well, but he also struggled to get on the field, and Atlanta was kind of in a rebuilding stage, so they moved on from him. Vasquez was really strong, but was coming off a down year compared to the year prior, and they were still able to collect a lot of money on him. Barajas is still a bit unproven at the time. Cade Cowell struggled a lot in recent years in MLS, so they're not taking your Lucho Acostas, they're not taking your Hani Mukhtars, you're cashing in on players that just didn't, or I shouldn't say didn't fit on the team because that would be unfair to Vasquez because he did very well, but cashing in on players, I think, at the right time.
Yeah, so agreed, right? I think all of your points are valid in terms of the benefits, but I'm also just I think it's really interesting, right? Because there's this constant world that MLS keeps putting this narrative out, like us versus them, MLS versus Liga MX, right? and we're just sending some of our either our best players from the league in Vasquez, Giacomakis, those sorts of attackers, even Chicharito when he was healthy. I know it's kind of crazy to say, and that's a little less impactful, right? But those sorts of players were, or our most promising player, we're now looking at the likes of Barajas and Efren Alvarez and I mean Cade Cowell to a lesser extent, but we're sending these players over to that league, and we're still pushing this rivalry between the leagues thing, which I'm all for. By the way, like I love having something. Again, I don't like using the European comparison all the time. It's not really the same, but you're always talking about like, oh, Premier League versus Liga, La Liga versus Bundesliga, which is the better one, right? And I like to have that sort of conversation. But if you really wanted to establish dominance over this league, wouldn't you be trying to either send them somewhere else or really keep them and reinforce your league to continue to win things like Champions Cup and Leagues Cup, etc. Now, again, as you mentioned, it's all about the paycheck, right? And Liga MX is nothing if not the kings of overpaying for just anybody. So if they're going to throw 4 million at a guy who played 500 minutes, they paid 2 million for Efren Alvarez, 4 million for Cade Cowell. No, you don't turn that down. Not when you need the capital to keep improving and doing these changes, and likely you're not getting that money from anywhere else, right? And as when the clubs are negotiating this or the league are negotiating it, whoever's negotiating it, you're looking for the best deal. And as long as the player is cool with going that way, off you go, have a good time, right? So end of the day, I agree. I don't really care too much, but I do find it interesting that it's like Liga MX. You could probably argue is struggling in youth development comparatively to MLS, and they're making it a pretty distinguished point to be doing their shopping right across the border. I just think it's an interesting trend on a bunch of leagues that have been sitting there like us versus them, and we're just interacting with each other.
I mean, I think if anything, it makes the rivalry even more enticing because now you're going up against players that and you have like feelings towards, and versus like, you know, going up against Liga MX teams where you just don't know anybody on the team. And it's just like, all right, well, they've spent a lot of money on this team, but I don't know who any of these guys are. If they've never played for my teams or if they've never played against my team. So I don't have as much of a dog in the fight, but I think it could open the door for strengthening the rivalry even more. I mean, you could definitely ask the question of whether or not you should be strengthening them when we struggle so much as is already in like CONCACAF Champions League and you want to like actually take that seriously and try to win that, then yeah, I think that's a fair question to ask. But I still think that money's too good to turn down for a lot of teams. And
Oh yeah.
I think it's the right call for them to cash in on it. I don't think it's the wrong kind of money grab in this situation.
No, absolutely. And I'm not playing this out as something that's wrong. I just think it's interesting. I would do it too. But I just like how you're like, oh yeah, because now you got players going between. It makes the rivalry a little bit more absolute scenes when Cade Cowell drops a hat trick in the first 35 minutes against San Jose in Leagues Cup Game 1. I just looked it up. It's Chivas San Jose.
Oh God.
Instant tune in. I can't wait. That'll be elite.
Yes, 100%. Especially with the way San Jose is going this
Oh
year.
my god, I can't wait.